Hey, it's Fit Gear Hunter here with a major review. The review and comparison of the Garmin 945 versus the brand new Polar Vantage V2. And there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. So we're gonna break down a lot of the details. So the overview of the differences, what some of the day in the life might look like for different features, and major pros and cons that I would say set different parts of the aspects of them aside for better or worse, or pick your choice. So again, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. There's a lot more content coming, soon to 9, and some other reviews on the way, as well as the content behind might be changing soon. I think I'm going to get to I'm just going to do my videos in the box right now. Work out at CrossFit Homeward in Chapel Hill. If you ever come by, drop in. And I'm going to shoot the videos probably from there from now on. This might be the last or next to last video that you see. So I think that'll be fun to shoot it there versus in this office setting. So what are the primary differences, just to break it down and get into it really quickly? Well, they're both very similar on the outside. So they're both 47 millimeters. The Vantage V2 is less than 40. I think I said 46 millimeters in my review. I think it's 46.2 or I'm sorry, 0.4, something like that. They're both a 5-button configuration. They're both 1.2-inch screens, transflective screens. They're both about 52 grams. Maybe they're both exactly 52 grams. The 945 is rated at 14 days versus 7 or 9 days of battery life here. I'm getting 5.8 here, and I always got about 6.5 here. So not a whole lot of battery difference. I do keep the backlight turned up a little bit brighter on the 945. They both do multi-sport. They both have Gorilla Glass on front, so you can't get, this one has a plastic body, this one has an aluminum body, this one has sort of a more raised optical heart rate sensor, and we'll show and look at the differences. So what are the differences when we get into it? We're going to look at a hands-on and then the app sort of side by side. We're going to look at it. How does each work during a workout? How does each work? And how does the optical heart rate hold up for each of them? How does the after workout look? How does the load track? How does the recovery time look? How does workout evaluation? How does the sleep and wellness aspects come into play? And how do they function as just a basic day-to-day watch? So with that, let's get into it. Okay, so let's look at them side by side. If you look at them side by side, the Garmin looks visually bigger, and I think it is actually just a hair bigger by a millimeter or so, but it feels bigger on the wrist. Looking at them sort of in thickness, the Garmin is a little bit thicker, although it's just barely so. When you look at the back, I do love the aluminum of the Polar Vantage V2 versus the plastic of the Garmin, and their optical heart rate sensor, it fires 10 diodes, so a bunch of different colors and a different color pattern, and just to clarify that exactly, the optical heart rate sensor here on the Polar Vantage V2 is more accurate. It has been getting better results than compared to the Garmin, but if anything we do, we want to be using a chest strap. So again, you want to connect to a chest strap, anything there, it's firing there. I do like that it's nice and big and bright, but both of them fire a little bit differently. I do like the button presses and the button layout and design of the Polar better. When you look at the Polar, and we're going to look at it in this direction, you look at the backlight differences. So this is at 100%, and then this is the 100%. So this is 145 lumens, this is 27 lumens. So considerably brighter, and in person, this just feels like barely bright enough, but the wrist raise is a major difference. As I showed, I think in the video, you do a wrist raise, this is actually on the Polar right now versus the Garmin, way brighter. So you can see it's just a significantly dim wrist raise brightness. But looking first at the Polar and just how it functions, so turning that on, you have your training log. We're not going to get into that. You have your summary of how you see your fitness level. So we are going to dive into that. So you get your cardio load status showing productive. It shows your average strain over the last 7 days, and then the average over the last 28 days, and strain divided by tolerance equals 1.2, which just shows a productive. If you cross over like 1.3, 1.4, it's not as productive. And it all does give you a simple summary. So the full extent of their, training, load pro is this summary screen here. And then you go and we see the activity for the day. I do like the activity for the day a lot because a lot of different devices count steps or stairs. The activity for the day is your workout coupled with your movement around, coupled with your the number of steps you took. So it's a culmination of your actual day-to-day life coupled with workouts to say, are you hitting at 100% of what you could be hitting? much like the body battery on the Garmin, but I just like that it's a simple summary. I actually use that screen on a regular basis. Nothing there. This is a summary of how much time you spent throughout the week in each zone, and you can click in and see details and totals. Not as useful. The weather widget, you can dive in and see a lot of great information there. Check the video for the full specs. Here's the FitSpark, where it gives you a recommended workout for the day, and then the nightly recharge. This one has a little bit more pertinence and value. So you can see the full details of your night's sleep through the ANS, Autonomic Nervous System Recharge, as well as the Sleep Charge. You can dive into any one of these, and you can see the full specs, full details. Now, Garmin, as of now, has not updated their sleep tracking to the advanced sleep tracking that they're supposed to do, which is First Speed Analytics, but they're supposed to have all of the stats on the watch coming out soon, so hopefully that'll get done more quickly. The ANS does a great job at taking heart rate variability, breathing rate, beat-to-beat intervals, and giving you a summary for how you've done. So again, all of this is built into the watch, so that's a feature that's unique to Polar that's not available on the 945. So when you look at what you actually get functionally that has depth or usefulness to training and development, you have Training Load Pro, which just gives you that simple summary there. And then you have your nightly recharge, which is just your sleep. So your simple summary for the sleep. And if you look at what you get when you go on the Garmin platform, so you get weather widgets. This is body battery. This will track your, heart rate variability and your stress level over time. You can see your stress level in a pretty scale there. Here's your Training Load Pro for Garmin, or their training status, what they call it, productive, tracking a chart for your VO2 max, load level across time, so you can see how your load changed on the watch, not on the Polar. And you can see different areas of load, how you're accumulating what they consider aerobic load, that's anaerobic load at the top, highly aerobic and lowly aerobic, and how the range you want to fall in for the different types of load. So this is a big difference between the two. So on the Garmin platform, you get your load total, but then you get a specifics for what type of load you've been building over time, and then your recovery time. So Polar doesn't do recovery time unless you wear a chest strap and you link and sync your workout to Polar Beat and then have it flow to Polar Flow, and then you can get a recovery time. But Garmin has it built in. Whenever you do a workout, it flows here to this training status widget, and then in the bottom of it you can see your recovery time. But just like we saw, maybe you saw in the beginning, you can actually use it as a data field. So that's recovery time. I just like it as a data piece of information. So that is your Training Load Pro as you see it on the watch. Much more extensive here. Your weather, you can get a lot of good details. It is more in depth here. Sunset, sunrise. This is your VO2 max coupled with your lactate threshold, race predictions. I don't use a lot of those things because we're doing more CrossFit training and high-intensity interval training on this site. Health stats, my day, pulse ox. This is actually really useful information. A lot of different watches will track your pulse ox, but they don't tell you relative value. This gives an average of your pulse ox throughout the night that I scored 95%. There wasn't any significant drops or, in a useful version of pulse ox. Notifications, obviously, you can have music. One thing that's not on most all of them, this is music. You can play music off of this. You can store, you can even download Spotify playlists. So again, a lot of these platforms don't have music capabilities, and if they do have music capabilities, some of them just say you have to download MP3s. Here you can download playlists to use offline. You don't have to have your phone anywhere nearby, and you can listen to it in the music off Spotify. So again, neat little compass. I don't know that they have that on the Polar. I haven't really looked for it because we're just doing mostly CrossFit training. There's your last activity. So what do you see when you go to do a workout? So let's look at that now. And we're not going to go through the full ins and outs of what this does, but just mostly how they compare in the overview, the high levels. So let's just say we're going into the recording. You can only get 4 data fields. That's the most data fields that you can possibly see. And you can scroll through them here. There's the music, so that's the newly added thing. So 4 data fields is the most available. So we'll go ahead and stop that, and then we'll show what amount of information is visible on the watch after we look at the Garmin. No, we're not going to save that. So on the Garmin platform, you can make a dedicated widget for CrossFit. You can do 6. We actually don't have to start the workout to be able to see how this works. Here's my lap time. So Here in a basic workout, you know, I want to see my average heart rate or my heart rate up top. I want to see the average heart rate, time of day, last lap time. And then if I just want to see laps, like if I'm just tracking my pace to see rounds per time, and I want to see my lap time now versus the last lap time versus the average lap time, I want to see all that in one screen. You can do that. You can't get all of those lap feature timing, even if you wanted to, on the 4 data screens that are available. But the biggest thing I wanted you guys to see is that you can see 6 data screens on the Garmin. So let's look at it. When you look at what you see stat-wise within the Polar system, you go into the training log. There hasn't been anything for a couple days. I didn't work out today, but I did a lot of manual labor, and I built a pull-up bar. Oh, you know what? I'll just show it to you now. Okay, so it's super ghetto, but I built an outdoor pull-up bar, and I just put in the pad. Obviously, I did not buy enough concrete to fill in the spot, but all this is 4x4s by 10, 3 feet deep. You know, you want to go 3 feet deep to get a solid base. I just used a 4-foot threaded, that's what I meant to say. So it's 3 pre-threaded. I didn't realize, but at Home Depot, you can actually have them take a 10-foot pole and cut it into a 5-foot pole, and they'll thread it for you with cleaner threads than you would get when you buy it. So if you're going to do this, again, I used, on the bottom there, I used super high strength concrete for the base. And then for the mid part, I just used the Quikrete. I went ahead, I could only get 2.5 feet down before I hit a pad or some part of some debris. So I just did the whole thing in concrete so it'd have a solid base. You probably don't have to use that many. I think it was 3 bags per side, 3 80-pound bags per side. And this right here is 2 50-pound bags. If you want to get a guesstimate, you probably need 4 to build a better platform to go up. But again, a 4-foot pipe pre-threaded, and there you go. So unfortunately, there's not, you know, a lot of workouts to track in the last 2 days, because that was my workout for a day, was moving concrete. So here's what you see in just basic summary of information: heart rate information, cardio load. Now that's the most important, and I forgot you can just touch screen. This touch screen has actually worked well. It's been less glitchy than the Polar Vantage series. Heart rate zones, energy use. So this is a new piece of fuel-wise, so you can see how much energy you burned. Just simple basic stats, with the most important being this cardio load stat here. Now when you look at this, you can see in your last workout, you get to see a boatload of stats. So here, anaerobic, the aerobic and anaerobic. So Garmin breaks down the 2 different stats in 2 different categories. You can see your total load score. That might compare to sort of the cardio load, although it's a different range of systems. But this, you can see the impact there. You can see the impact in each type of load, and the training effect. This just sort of gives it a title of a tempo workout. And then you can go into heart rate. You can see all the details in the heart rate. If there were laps, if you did a long rounds per time, you could see that, or you can just get a summary of all the stats. So the summary of stats here is what I would compare to what you see in the Polar system. So that's what you see for the workout. So you look at the basics, and now let's look at go back to looking at the watch. So we've looked at the basic widget functionalities, or the basic information functionalities. We've looked at how the backlight works. We've looked at how it looks in a workout, how it looks after a workout, and how each of them evaluates the intensity of the workout as it compares to your training history over time. Training load pro versus training status here. So let's go into the different aspects of, I don't even know. Yeah, I guess I do have it up. So this is the landing platform for each of them. So you get your summary of stats for the day here. We'll just go bounce through it. So you have your sleep score. Now that's got its own widget, but it's also available in the nightly recharge. You can dive right back into that sleep there, or you can see this, you know, the details. So this will track your heart rate variability, beat-to-beat intervals, and your breathing rate over a 4-hour window, from an hour after you fall asleep to 4 hours later, and it'll compare that to 28 days. So that is very useful, but it also doesn't take into account how much expenditure occurred in the day before or leading up to that 4-hour window. Sleep charge, they are the best at just the actual sleep number. I have found, because I did do testing for the sleep score aspect of First Beat Analytics, it's on the Phoenix 6 now. It's supposed to be coming to the 945, and I found it to be very useful. Actually very good. You know, the sleep score was low when I had a bad sleep. So like, I tested Fitbit sleep system, and let me just make a commentary. I thought it was junk, in my opinion. Super bland. Fitbit always gave me like an 85 or a 90 when I was super run down. The Polar system was telling me I was compromised, and Garmin's Fenix 6 new sleep tracking was saying I was getting like a 60 or a 70. Fitbit was saying I'm getting an 80. But Polar does a great job at breaking down a bunch of different details besides just REM and deep sleep. Again, this does compare, the sleep score system does compare to what you now get or will be getting in the 945. But if you look back at Garmin, so this is the basic summary as it was in Garmin's old system before they get the update to the First Speed Analytics to give you a sleep score. And I do like that they give you some value. Now, I don't know why it said 95%. We saw that on the watch. It says 92% was the average throughout the night. That doesn't make sense. And you can see your respiration rate. So it has the same stats, but it doesn't combine them the way Polar does. But one thing it does do well is the body battery. So you can see this over the course of days. It takes into account how hard your day was. Like how much regeneration did I have in a night? You know, based on how much sleep. See, like I'm not regenerating fully. So I'm going into my sleep needing more regeneration to approach the next day. Whereas with Polar's system on this autonomic nervous system recharge, you're getting that 4-hour window as it compares to a baseline of 28 days, but it's 4 hours just in that one point in time compared to 4 hours over the average. Where here, this looks into account for like how much regeneration versus depletion I had over the course of time. And if I severely depleted my resource the next day and then didn't get good sleep to regenerate them, then I'm much more worn down than just a sleep score will tell me or a 4-hour window would tell me on one system. So that's the primary differences I wanted to highlight. Polar versus Garmin, Vantage V2 versus 945. So Polar does a great job on the sleep. I just feel like it's a little bit more useful here. This again is the landing page. As you saw a second ago with the Polar landing page, you get all these stats. You can dive into any of these. We're not going to look at them. One of the things that we'll see the difference about Garmin is you get a lot of detail to your training status. So it goes into layers of detail. I actually find it to be sometimes a little bit difficult to just see the bottom line. Like if I go into load, I kind of just want to see this. Like where am I at in the range and where my load is for now. So again, I didn't work out today. Like I said, I built a pull-up bar. So this is the load over time. But what it does do well is it shows you 3 different types of load categories and how you're building that load over time. Load focus. So it gives you super deep details into the type of training load. What you see in the Polar system is you just see the basic load overall. So you can see that this load calculation, I'm saying it's productive, is based on, let's see, it's Saturday, my strain being over my tolerance, my average of my 7 days of workouts compared to my 28 days of accumulation. But one of the things that Polar does really well is if I go in here and I wanted to see it in long-term planning mode, I can see how my fitness is that blue water line. So you're building your blue water line up as high as you can. And I took some time off from using Polar for a bit of time as I was testing a different device. So I tragically, my water line fell. But it's super beautiful. I mean, the load tracking is fantastic. The only thing about it that it doesn't quite take into account is it doesn't take into account your VO2 max and your fitness level while it's assessing this load. This is just a pure analytical valuation, quantitative valuation for, if you have this many high-level cardio load days, your strain level for the last 7 days will average up at a higher level, and your tolerance for the last 28 days will average up over a longer period of time. But it doesn't say, well, if a 148 how it compares to my fitness level. Now, as I get fitter, it's harder for me to score a 148 because my fitness, my heart rate is not going to go up as high. So it does sort of relate, but within Garmin's system, it does take into account this green bar, which is somewhat linked to your VO2 max, what your range should be. But it also is similarly tied into Polar. So there's not a lot of difference there. The thing about Garmin, there's a pro and a con. Now, the pro is kind of significant in that it gives you different types of load. The con is that the actual simple number for your load is buried deep within the watch, and you can't even get it. So like I have an inactive 6, and if you see my 7-day load, it doesn't track it watch to watch. So within the Polar system, you can see my load over however many devices I've tested, however much time I've tested. But within Garmin's system, you only get what I've tested, since I've been testing a recent device. Doesn't make any sense. But that's how you see the differences in training evaluation within the Polar and within the Garmin. Okay, so we looked at the watch, how it functions, basic function, how a workout looked, what the summary of the workout looks like, and how it shows your training status. And now we're looking at the training status here, as well as we looked at sleep and wellness and recovery. You know, that sort of summarizes the basics for what the differences are between the 945 and the Vantage V2. Again, you see a lot. There is a lot more expansiveness in the Garmin platform. You can get a lot more details. The pulse ox obviously is not an available aspect within the Vantage V. And if I was to summarize them, and I'm going to give you just a full summary, one of the things I forgot to mention is that notifications, you know, when you get a notification here, you know, it's below, and for some reason they disappeared. You have to do a wrist raise to get your notification. Oh, there it is. Oh, perfect timing. So I was in the notification field, so it appeared here now. But otherwise, you have to raise your wrist within like 30 seconds to capture it. But you can see that the notification appears automatically here. It actually does not appear automatically on the watch unless you wrist raise here. So if you're just wanting to glance down in a meeting and see a notification, you have to do a wrist raise, and it's not working for me all the time. The wrist raise gesture is not bringing it up. And if, again, you don't catch it within the first 30 seconds, it'll disappear. But that was great. So you can see a difference. But the notifications has been super frustrating. I actually don't count on notifications. I've gotten to the point where I just actually don't count on them to work. 50% of the time they're not coming through. As I showed in my full review, the link between the watch and the phone is delinking too often. So again, that's the summary of the two. Let's go to a full face-to-face summary and we'll be done. Okay, so what do I think in summary? When I look at the two, Garmin is just pretty far and away ahead in all the different departments. There's some things that I really like and want to point out. Polar, I mean, this watch is probably the perfectly designed watch. Everything about the design, the features, the way the band feels, everything, the button presses, everything is fantastic. They just have to work on some of the things that they're not doing as well as Garmin, and Garmin is just more extensive. So you break down all the different basic aspects of what you would use it for. So in the workouts, now the Polar is slightly winning on the optical heart rate, but they're very similar. They do both evaluate the intensity of your workout. Garmin just does it in two levels. Anaerobic versus cardio load on the Polar. They do evaluate the load impact. So Polar has a load tracking system over time. Garmin has a load tracking system over time. Garmin's is a little bit too buried, but they also track the types of loads you're under. So highly aerobic, lowly aerobic, and anaerobic, how much load you're building in different areas. And there's different studies on whether lowly aerobic training alongside highly aerobic really benefits your fitness long term. So they'll track all of those. So like two different variables, aerobic and anaerobic, on the training effect in three different ways. Recovery time. So you can do the trick where if you wear a chest strap and you track your workout on Polar Beat and then it flows over to Polar Flow, you'll get a recovery time there as long as all the primary stats for cardio load that you would get, straight off the watch. But it's just not native to using the watch and getting it on Polar Flow, the recovery time. So Garmin's got the recovery time, and Garmin has now enhanced the recovery time to take into account the rest and recharge from the body battery. So let's talk about that. Sleep and wellness. Polar does fantastic nightly recharge, a simple summary that is usually spot on with how I'm feeling when I wake up in the morning. Compromised, ready to train, ready to kill it, very, very, stripped down. So, it'll really get that straight by using the autonomic nervous system, taking into account, heart rate variability, breathing rate, beat-to-beat intervals, and coupling it with a sleep score. So Garmin has body battery, and body battery does give you depletion. The thing that's better about body battery is it's all day. So if you had a seriously stressful day, a lot of workout, and your whole body was depleted, and then you didn't sleep well, you'll see a slight generation. Polar's just going to track how did that 4-hour window compare to the last 28 days of 4-hour windows. But the Garmin's going to take into account how the day before affected the regeneration at night. But their sleep tracking is not quite as good. They're supposed to have advanced, and as of the time of this video, they don't have the advanced sleep tracking that gives you a sleep score and first beat analytics built into the watch. So definitely better compiled sleep in the Polar, but still the body battery still takes Garmin back into the game. During the workout, you're limited to 4 data points on the screen versus 6 data points after the workout. Garmin just better laid out and how they summarize the information. Polar's going to have a big red window with some bullets down below. Garmin just summarizes it better, in my opinion. Again, the design, better here, way better. Aluminum, perfect casing, circular design, button presses. Garmin does okay, Screen quality, though. This goes up to 145 lumens of brightness. This goes up to 27. So again, it's like 5 times brighter. And so on 10% brightness on the Garmin, I feel like it's more readable than at whatever the full brightness is here. So if you take the wrist raise brightness at 6 lumens and you just compare it to 10% of the lumen brightness here, which I think is coming in at about 20 lumens. If you take 10% of the brightness here, you're still getting almost 25%. It's like so dim that it's almost more frustrating than useful than helpful. So the screen is not as good. The screen is more clear here in just reading day-to-day messages, day-to-day functionality. The watch usage, again, the notifications, I'm getting about half the time where the watch is not synced for whatever reason to the notifications, and you have to do a wrist raise to see your notification, which the wrist raise gesture doesn't always quite pick up. So you wrist raise, and then if you don't wrist raise soon enough, then a wrist raise won't even bring up the notification. You actually have to swipe up to get the notification. It just automatically appears here, so you don't have to do a wrist raise, and then the wrist raise works. And if you do wrist raise here, it's going to be a little bit dim. Everything else functions great as far as a watch. This has more widgets. This has more customizations. You can download apps. Polar, you can turn off certain widgets, but I find that the summary of widgets that are available, the summary of like watch face screens, is all you would probably need. It's just the notification is just problematic for day-to-day use, and then Garmin just brings so much customization, so much expansiveness to the table. I do like the activity day, the day of activity, which takes into account your steps and your heart rate, your overall movement throughout the day, not just step counting, to see how much just my broad day, how much activity I've taken into account. I feel like that's a good summary screen. Garmin doesn't have anything like that, but at the same time, they have a lot of other capabilities that you can download and utilize. Maps, this has extensive maps. This does not have them. So again, if you're an outdoor enthusiast, and I hate to say this, if you're an outdoor enthusiast that does a lot of mountain biking and climbing and hiking in the wilderness, there is no comparison between these two. Garmin 945 is way out of the gate ahead of it and ahead of all the other competition with the map compilations. You can do skiing. You can see where you are on a plot. You can chart to the next Starbucks and map your way there here, as well as just see when you're lost in the wilderness how to get back. You can't do any of that here, nor can you on Sunto and Chorus, in my opinion, for what the functionality is on the Garmin. But all the different, high functioning, notifications, or not high function notifications, but the aspects you can track for hiking, for mountain biking, that tell you all sorts of different details, Garmin just does it better. So anyway, in summary, for CrossFit training, for high intensity interval workouts, how do they compare? Obviously, it just keep to the simple stuff that I shared in the beginning of this summary. They both can do it well. So Polar can do it well. You just have the frustration of the brightness of the screens, the notifications not coming up, notifications not working at most times, and not getting the expansiveness of the widgets, but you do have the beautiful layout of the load and some of the other aspects. The 945, in my opinion, just has a whole bunch else to offer for $100 more, and you can go hiking in the mountains, get lost, and see it on a map here. So thanks so much for watching. This is the Gear Fit Hunter. Have a great day.